Merrill Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of Merrill Memo. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been another little busy week, hasn't it, out there in Dubbo town and Wellington surrounds. So, of course, today what we want to look at is a bit of an update on the recent storm. How's all that clean-up going? We're also going to have a bit of a talk about and discuss, I suggest, who attended the recent new residents' night. Plus, we're also going to find out about those final plans for the New South Wales Junior Touch Footy competition. Another busy little podcast coming up here today, Matt, I'd suggest. So how are you, first of all?
Yeah, good, thank you. And you're right, it's a busy week. Seems to get busier and busier. It was actually nice for maybe a week or so over Christmas where it was just a little bit quieter.
That's right, yeah.
Things are ramping up and lots of things happening, which is fantastic, really. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see a community dying and withering on the vine. You want to see it robust. You want to see it exciting. You want to see it activated and lots of activity. Too much activity is what you're really after. So
it's always good to sort of see that vibrancy around the town, isn't it, when things are happening around the place?
It is actually. It really gives you a bit of a buzz being involved in some small way, but there are so many active people in our community, so many people doing so many different things. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about this job is hearing from different people when they tell you about some of the things that they're up to, some of the things happening in the community, whether it be involved in music or sport or organising functions or raising some money for charity. There are so many people in our community doing some really great things, and I think it is a community that really cares about the rest of the community, so they are really interested in making sure that things happen well in our community. So it's quite nice to be involved.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear. So, mate, let's get ourselves started here today. Just to start off with, in regards to the recent clean-up. Now, obviously, we talked about this last week after that terrible storm that went through and the damage that was done. How's the clean-up going, first of all? How's the town feeling and looking?
It was actually interesting. I did take note on the first couple of days after the storm, which was Thursday night, week ago, and there was that sound of chainsaws and chippers that were happening as you went around the community. I went for a bit of a bike ride and heard a bit of that noise, and I thought to myself, that's probably going to be the sound of Dubbo for the next week, and that was probably about what happened over the following week. We did get a chance, council's got a chance to go out and visit the SES headquarters out near the airport.
Okay.
And that was fascinating, just talking to some of the volunteers. They'd come in to have some lunch and just basically have a bit of a break during the day. And just hearing from them some of the stories about various incidents that they'd attended. They had about 250 phone calls by the Thursday night after that storm. But one of the things that we found fascinating was up on the wall was a map of all the various locations of where all the call-outs had occurred. Yep. And it was quite obvious looking at that map that you saw this sort of path that the wind or the real activity had occurred, and it was mainly focused around Eastridge. That seemed to be where it hit hardest. Yep. And then it kind of came down, obviously past your school, past
which has been absolutely demolished.
That's right, and down through a little bit through South Dubbo, and you could just see that path that it had taken throughout there. Right. So it was interesting. We talked last week about the fact that we were doing free drop-offs for green waste for a week, which ended on the 19th. And so that was a small thing that council could do where you didn't have to pay to take out your green waste that had broken off, fallen over, whatever, in that storm. And so you could drop that off at the tip. Now, we analysed where people were coming from, analysed a bit of the data from the SES because we wanted to do a little bit more, but we just didn't have the ability, the resources with our own staff and couldn't get contractors involved to do an extra curbside cleanup, for example, of green waste. And so we worked out what else could we possibly do? And so we did an extra green waste bin collection. Now, that's already happened. Okay. That happened on Saturday the 18th. Yep. And we did it just around that Eastridge area.
So the main hit area, you basically felt that was probably the biggest need area.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It was the greatest need. And what we found, because we were getting information from people when they took their green waste out to the tip, about 70% of the green waste that was dumped at the tip under that offer that we had for free dumping there was from the Eastridge area. Okay. So we thought that'd be a logical place to do it. Now, for some people, obviously, they couldn't always load up a trailer and get out there. And for some people, it was only small branches, small items. So basically, we did an extra green waste bin collection. Excellent. And that wasn't at too much expense to council. And that was something we could do within the resources we had available to us. So that seemed to be something that worked well. I'm sure other people in Dubbo would say, well, why did you pick up my area? But again, we're trying to go to the area of greatest need. always when council makes decisions like this, you're going to have some people who are going to miss out, and there would be some people in other areas that said, well, I couldn't get out there as well. I might be a bit older, or I don't have a vehicle. So there's all those stories. But again, what we're trying to do is just something to try and help out as many people as we possibly could within the budgetary constraints we had. So it seemed to be well received by the people who had the green waste pickup, obviously.
Yes, absolutely.
And I haven't heard too much from the rest of Dubbo, but again, we were doing the best we possibly could with the constraints that we had.
Well done. Now, Matt, late last week you attended this week, should I say, you attended the New Residents Night. Now, this is always a nice night, I'd suggest, for the mayor to turn up to. So this is the group that, they're new residents in town, but they're not new Australians. So these are basically people who've chosen to move from another city or town in Australia to come here to Dubbo. So first and foremost, how many people turned up to this night?
Yeah, well, the one we had last week, or in this week just gone, we had about 150 people.
That's a great
registered to turn up. Now, I didn't actually do a head count there on the night, but we'd know those numbers. But pretty close to that, looked like they were there. It was Old Dubbo Jail, so it was a big area there. But it's one of the things that we started back when I was mayor before with Dubbo City Council. We started them back then, and it was something that we did, I can't remember, but it was probably 2 or 3 times a year. Just all the people that have moved to Dubbo since the last New Residents Night. Yeah. And they're not, you said they're not new Australians, they're new to our city. Sometimes they are new Australians as well.
Be, I suppose, that's right. Yes.
But it really is focused on, if you've moved to Dubbo from anywhere else in the world, then come along. We invite you along. Now, we don't sit there and check passports and their driver's license and make sure they've checked it. It's a bit of an honesty system, but we find that people are pretty good about it. They're not going to turn up to a night that isn't really for them. What we do have, there's a few things about it, and I love them actually. I really enjoy them. One of the things we do is we have a range of different groups that are involved in Dubbo activities. So, for example, it might be service clubs or sporting clubs or clubs or organisations for people that are...
So they all come along on the night as well, do they?
They set up a table. We give them a table to set up on. And it's really, if I move to somewhere new, I'd be looking for some ways to involve myself in the community. So if not that I ever plan on leaving Dubbo, but if I did leave Dubbo, then I'd be going, well, what Rotary Club could I join? And is there a mountain bike club I can go and ride my mountain bike with? And is there some other sort of club or organisation that I get involved with in some way, shape or form? So what we do is we try and encourage that because we want people to have a really good experience there. So all the stall holders...
So it's quite an interactive experience. It's not the classic sort of turn up to an event, someone talks and cup of tea at the end and we all walk away. It's an interactive type experience in that way.
We want them to be out there talking to those different stall holders. We want them to be engaged, involved. Could they go along? Is there a musical instrument they wanted to learn? So they go along to the Macquarie Conservatorium and sign up there. Or have they got a business interest? So the Chamber of Commerce is there set up. So all these different types of groups. And we had about 24 it was during the week of those stall holders. So there's a lot there for people to look at. And then, again, 150 residents there. And then what we do is we do a few little games with them, give them some prizes. I like to give them a bit of a quiz and I just make up a few questions.
Absolutely.
That's right. About Dubbo typically. So they learn a bit about Dubbo while they're answering a few questions and then win a couple of prizes at the end. And then what we normally do is a few things where we might say, how far have you moved from? Who's moved the furthest distance? Have you moved more than 50 kilometres and most people stay in? And then more than 100 and a few people get knocked out. And then more than 500, more than you get to the stage where you'll normally get to the thousands of kilometres that people have moved. And then I normally like to just go around and interview a few people. We've got the microphone and go.
So tell me then, who these new residents have we got, without obviously disclosing names and things like that, but so where are some of these people coming from?
Well, it really is literally all over the place. So I talked to one particular person there from Nowra, I had someone else there from Hobart, so it's nearby and it's much further away. And someone that was quite interesting from Victoria, and they'd gotten to the stage where they were just a bit sick of the lockdowns. Because one of the things I like to do is, as I say, that's great you've moved here. You've obviously shown that you're more intelligent than most average Australians because you've moved to Dubbo. But now tell me why. Tell me what were the exact circumstances. And they vary. Sometimes it's a job opportunity. The Victorian couple was really, they were sick of the lockdowns. They wanted to get out of there. They'd had holidays up around the Gold Coast, around Maroochydore from time to time, and they'd driven through Dubbo. They'd stayed at Dubbo sometimes. And they said, well, if we're going to move out of Victoria, well, that Dubbo seemed like quite a nice place. So they specifically chose Dubbo. The work that particular couple did could be done anywhere. They were very mobile in what their actual work was. So for some people, it's about a particular job being advertised. But for this couple, it was really about, well, we can go anywhere. Where do we want to choose? So out of all the places they could have chosen, they wanted to be out of Victoria, so that ruled out all of Victoria. Then they could choose anywhere, and they chose Dubbo. So you hear lots of those stories like that, where people are moving. Sometimes it's for their partner's work, and they've come along for the ride. Sometimes it's schooling opportunities. But it's actually really enjoyable just talking to some of those people and finding out some of the background, some of the information. And again, we've been doing them twice a year at this stage, obviously out of COVID. There were some interruptions there, but hopefully what I've suggested, we ramp them back up to 3 times a year, because we almost had too many people there tonight. When you've got that many people, I like to get a bit more information out of people, but I just didn't have the chance. I had 2 hours.
Speaking of which, whereabouts did we hold it at this time around? Is it the Western Plains Cultural Centre? Is that a normal sort of place we would go to, or where do we go to this time?
Yeah, we have had them at the Cultural Centre before.
Yeah.
This time we held this particular one at the jail. And
the jail.
Go back to my old time as mayor. We used to hold them at the jail almost all the time because it's different.
Yeah.
The Cultural Centre is fantastic, but when you look at that little function area, we kind of hold them in the foyer of the Cultural Centre. That's a lovely area, but that could be lots of different foyers of lots of different buildings across the nation.
Yeah, it's true.
Old Dubbo Jail, there aren't many places that
it's quite
you can
unique,
hold.
isn't it?
It's not. I don't say it's quite unique, because there are. I don't actually use the term quite unique, because unique is binary, yes or no. So it's not unique.
Yes.
There are other places, but it's rare. So I like the idea that they look around there and they go, oh, wow, this is pretty interesting. I've had an interesting experience. They may not have been there before, they may have, but we get in there and we get a few nibbles from the council and we get a bit of a discussion. We hear from the mayor, and that's actually interesting for some people, especially people that moved out of metro areas. I think I've said to you before, I'm just a normal person. I'm not anything special. I'm happen to be the mayor, but that doesn't make me special. But for some of these people, they'll come up to me and they'll say, I really appreciate that you've come along. I moved from wherever they might have moved from. I've never met a councillor or a mayor before, so I think it's really special that you come along. For me, I wouldn't possibly think about having that night without me being there, because I think it's a mark of respect for those new people that have moved here, that the mayor bothers to get up off his seat and walk down to the jail and say, welcome along, thanks very much. But in this particular one, we had our state member, Dougal Saunders, came along. We normally have a representative from the police. We had a few of our councillors, Shibley Chowdhury, Jess Goff, Richard Ivey, Vicky Etheridge all came along as well. They drew out a couple of the lucky door prizes we gave away. So I think the community actually has a huge amount of respect for the fact that council and elected representatives come along. Our CEO was there. I mean, how many times would people normally, if you lived in some suburb in Sydney, how often would you get a chance to talk to the general manager of a local council? So all those things, some of our directors from council were there. I just think that's, it's a really mark of respect to those people that have come along, and they feel a bit special as well that we've bothered to come along and welcome them.
The thing I love about that is the fact that it shows too the fact, as you say, it's a mark of respect to these people. But it also shows, I'd suggest, the fact that just how important that we see this as here in Dubbo, when we get these new residents in. As you say, it is the mark of respect, but it's also for us too. This is a sign of the fact this is who we are here in Dubbo. We value you guys coming here. We value our new residents, and this is how we show that, is the fact that our dignitaries, but you know what I mean, the important people in our community group here are making important decisions, are there to welcome them in. So that's fantastic.
And I think it's a really good point you make there, that it's showing them, it's all well and good to say, you're really important to us, you're new residents, but if you don't do anything to back it up, it seems a bit hollow. Whereas you're important to us, and we'll show you how important you are by putting a function on for you, by having, as you say, the dignitaries come along. I think those things are all very important. But you can imagine too, some of those people tonight, especially some of the kids that were there, often families moved to Dubbo, and some of the kids will be chatting away to some of their friends back from wherever they came from and go, went to a function tonight and there's some councillors and the mayor and the local member there, and they'll go, really? Oh, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So all of those things there, I think, just adds up to this being a really good community and this being a great community for people.
What a great way to welcome our new residents. Now, during the week, Matt, you had a meeting in regards to the 12-mile intersection there, the Goolma Road 12-mile intersection. This is heading out towards the Badangra site, the renewable energy site. I'd be suggesting the fact that this sounds like an important meeting worthwhile discussing, because there's a lot of stuff happening out in this area. And I'm assuming that this must be in regards to the residents in this area, and possibly I'd suggesting talking about what's actually happening out in that area, giving you feedback in regards to their thoughts, I'd suggest, and what's going forward. So tell us a little about how the meeting went and what their concerns are.
Yeah, so it was a bit like we talked before, it was only last week, I think, where we talked about a meeting we had along Saxa Road about the causeway there and just meeting with residents. And that was a formal organised meeting in Comabella Hall. Mm-hmm. And so this was a little bit different. This was a couple of residents along that 12-mile road. Yep. And again, people will probably be familiar with that intersection as you're going towards Mudgee. When you go on that Goolma Road, you turn around to the left to go down towards the jail sites, and just to the right, the road goes off, or if you went straight ahead, actually it would keep going, and that's 12-mile road along there. Yep. So effectively, there'll be a wind farm built out there, maybe about 15 kilometres out along that 12-mile road. One of the great opportunities that I see for some of these renewable energy projects that are being built around that Badengra area outside Wellington is that you've got an opportunity for the people building these particular renewable energy projects need to have roads in good enough condition for their heavy vehicles to get on them. Some of these roads aren't used a lot. Some of these roads aren't in great condition. They've been damaged by water, obviously, but for many years they haven't been in great condition.
Just sort of a typical sort of those minor little roads there that sit out and a lot across New South Wales, across Australia, I'd suggest.
Yeah, that's right. Not a lot of traffic on them. It's hard to justify spending too much money on them, but they'll need to. These proponents will need to spend money on them to get those roads to a good standard. So there's an opportunity there, but at the same time, they've got to get it right. And so that's hence sometimes residents want to talk to members of council, our staff, just to try and see how they can get it right. It's actually a little bit frustrating from our perspective because council is not the consent authority to any of these renewable energy projects.
Yeah, so we've talked about this, haven't we, in regards to it, you have a voice, but you don't have much of a...
It's a squeaky little mouse
squeaky
voice.
Little voice, but there's not a lot of strength behind it, so to speak.
No, and that's the problem. So a proponent comes along to put one of these particular projects in, and don't get me wrong, I'm all in favour of them. I think it's fantastic. And they're deemed to be state significant developments, SSDs. So they go through a particular planning process that effectively is under the control of the state government. Now, they'll tell council about those projects and they'll ask for an opinion from council. They'll ask for our thoughts maybe at a technical level. This particular road here, what do you think we need to do to this road to fix it up, or this intersection? But they can do whatever they want with our advice. They can ignore it completely. They can say, gee, that's really good information you've given there, but we're not going to go with that. We don't get to be the ones to say yes or no. Therefore, we don't actually get to control the project. But unfortunately, we are local government, so we're at the coalface with residents. So residents turn to us first to get some help on these projects. The best we can do, and these particular residents I spoke to during the week, I said, I'm happy to send a letter with a mayoral crest on the top and signed by the mayor. I said, but I don't have the power you think I have. They'll get that mayoral letter and they'll go, gee, that's great. The mayor's supporting the residents there, and thanks very much. They don't need to take any notice of it.
There's no more power that you have than possibly some of the residents,
Well, in fact, sometimes the residents have more power because there might be more of them, because they're voicing an opinion on behalf of a group of residents. And so sometimes they'll actually listen to the residents more than they will a mayor because they're concerned about what the impact might be around that local area and about the, I suppose, social licence that they might have from those local residents. Again, there's a consent that the state government will give, or eventually will give, and it will have certain conditions for what the road will have to do. Some residents might want other treatments of the road, and sometimes they're just going to ignore that. They're going to make it safe for the project to go ahead, but it mightn't be to the level that residents want. So sometimes it can be a bit frustrating. It's good to have discussions with residents about that, but it's also a complete lack of understanding from many residents because they turn to council for everything. That's the general opinion. And it was actually interesting, I didn't mention it, but at the new residents' night we had the Mayor of Gilgandra come along, Doug Batten. And I get on very well with Doug. Yes. I've known Doug for a long time.
You try and take a few of our residents across to Gilgandra?
Well, we did joke about that, saying, who are you here to steal some of our good residents?
That's right.
He actually had rung our staff earlier on in the day and just said, do you mind if I come along, bring one of our staff members along to look at what you do, because we'd like to do something similar in Gilgandra, and we're more than happy with that. We like to share ideas around. But we actually had a chat about it at the new residents' night, and we were talking about some of the various things that councils get involved with, because Gilgandra Council's doing something with Inland Rail, building some houses for them, for some of their executives, and it's a good idea, but council gets involved in so many things. And we both talked about one example that we know of, which is Brewarrina, where at one stage they built a hairdressing studio because they found that they couldn't get people to move to Brewarrina because people said you can't even get a haircut there.
Yeah, right. So council got involved and...
Council went and started a business of a hairdressing studio and brought in staff. No good at all. Brought in staff to man that. And essentially, you're there as a council thinking, why are we running a hairdressing studio? So council does get involved in lots of things. People turn to council for lots of their problems and expect council to have all the answers. And unfortunately, we don't. I've had people ask me to fix interest rates, to change tax laws, all sorts of wonderful things. Yeah, right. I'd love to have the power to do all the things that people ask me to do.
It may well be a position coming up soon with the Reserve Bank. You never know.
That's right. I did say I'll jump on the phone, chat to my good mate Phil Lowe and get him to sort that out. So it is a bit frustrating from a council perspective. Even the whole concept around planning agreements, paying money from solar farms. Solar farms, batteries don't have to pay any money. Wind farms do. No one's been able to explain that to me. I don't understand that. And again, the community says, well, why don't you just tell them they can't go ahead until they pay that money? I said, we'd love to do that. But again, we don't get to say no.
You don't have the authority on that, do you?
We don't have the authority on that. So it's one of those things you need to make sure you know what you can do in terms of the laws around council, what council laws, what council as an entity can do, and make sure you focus on those things and things that are outside those. Sometimes there's no point spinning your wheels on that. You're wasting a lot of time and energy for something that you can't control. So you've got to be aware of that, and it might sound like you're fobbing it off sometimes to a resident, but there's lots of things we can control and we've got to work on. You've only got so many hours in a day. You've only got so many dollars in the bank. You've got to use those the most effectively.
Absolutely. I like this one, Matt. Barb Redgrave. What a wonderful woman who's done an enormous amount for Dubbo, and particularly for those who don't know Barb, Barb's the president of the Dubbo Eisteddfod Society. And now, during the week, I have a feeling the fact that Barb has clicked up, is it 27 years now?
I think she's entering her 27th year.
27th year. That's amazing, isn't it? Eh? So God loving it. So Barb, for those who don't know, was an ex-school teacher, and is now obviously retired from teaching and very much now involved with the Eisteddfod and runs that wonderful program that sets with every June here in Dubbo that runs it through. So during the week you went along to the Eisteddfod committee, and was it this for the election of Barb again for her 27th year of presidents? Is that how it worked? Or?
So this is their AGM.
So it's AGM, okay.
And the mayor of the city, for
Which
better or for worse,
that's it, yes,
gets to come along and run the election for the AGM of the city of Dubbo Eisteddfod. Now, I'm a big fan of the Eisteddfod. My kids have competed for years. Yes. I competed when I was a kid. I've competed in recent years when kids have been doing things and I go and do some poetry with them, whatever it might be. So, huge fan of the Eisteddfod. I think it's wonderful. And they do a wonderful job. A group of volunteers. Typically, it runs for about 18 days. So many different disciplines with dance, with instruments, with obviously the poetry, with the drama and those type of things they do. So absolutely wonderful job. And again, just listening to them. So it was actually quite enjoyable going along. I do enjoy going to the AGM each year. And yes, technically I'm there to run the election because they need someone external from the committee to run the election.
Is it like an honorary position sort of thing? Is that right?
It seems to be, yeah. The mayor of the city seems to have been on that. I don't know for how long, but I remember when I was back mayor of Dubbo City Council, I did it each year then. Don't know how many years previous mayors had done it before that, but again, back in now, and that's one of the jobs I get to do again, which is great.
Yes.
But again, you've got all these dedicated people all sitting around, and obviously the election process is pretty simple because they've normally nominated someone. There'll be normally one person stand, and that's it, and you go through and you've got the new committee, and on they go and get started organising. Now, you're right, it's the middle of the year they hold it. Here we are, the AGM is in February, but they'll start planning that probably pretty much from now, and it'll be...
Oh, it's a massive event of planning.
That's right. And think about all the entries that have got to be put in.
Absolutely.
So you've got to plan all that, just getting the categories, making sure you've got the right categories there, then actually running the event, getting volunteers to run the event. So it is a really good institution in Dubbo. And having done various Eisteddfods with the kids over the years at various locations, probably 8 or 9 different locations around the region, I just always felt like, and maybe I'm a bit biased, but I always felt like the city of Dubbo Eisteddfod just ran that a little bit nicer, a little bit smoother, a little bit more efficiently.
Orange and Bathurst may disagree, but I'm with you on the Dubbo front. Don't worry.
They may, and again, it's one of those things that you've seen it happen for so many years, you just take it for granted. But no, there's people behind the scenes who are working very hard to make it happen.
Special.
So congratulations to that committee again. It was very enjoyable going along, talking to those ladies. And when I say ladies, it was all ladies there at the night. There is one
the only
male.
rooster in the hen house.
That's right. There's one male on the committee, but he wasn't there on that night. So I was there all by myself, but that was okay. They're all very lovely ladies.
Absolutely.
But again, just seeing what happens there and seeing Barb, again, just people there. No one was going to oppose Barb. Barb can have that job as long as she likes it.
A bit like Queen Elizabeth II. I think she'll have that reign until she passes away. God love her.
Possibly.
I know we had a little talk about this going back a couple of podcasts back now, and this is obviously after Australia Day. Now, the Wellington Australia Day we've talked about, but there's obviously, it's important, I think, for every committee that is involved in something like an Australia Day celebration. There needs to be the debrief, and I know we mentioned this recently. Now, this is a very important debrief, and I'd also suggest from this debrief there's going to be some important decisions made. I'd suggest with consultation too with the community in regards to, are we going to continue to run Australia Day in Wellington on the 25th? Is the community happy with it? It certainly sounds like it was a great day. How did the debrief meeting go?
So you are right. It is important to actually have that sort of debrief after various events. And again, something that happens once a year, if you don't look at it again until we start planning it for next year, everyone sits around, no, I had last year go, I think it was okay. I can't remember. That was a long time ago now. So having that debrief fairly soon after the actual event. So we had the debrief for the Wellington Australia Day Committee just in the last week. And one of the things that we talked about there was the impressions of various people on the committee, how various things went there, and just a few bits of feedback there. But you're right, most importantly, it'll go out now to a survey, to the community, to see what the community thought about a whole range of things. Some of the things that will be important aspects will be the actual time of the event. So we've got permission now from Andrew Giles, the minister, the relevant minister at the federal level. They'll change, or they've already changed the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code, so we can have a 3-day window before or after the actual 26th.
That's going to be significant, isn't it?
It will be, and it will give you more flexibility when you hold the event. It just so happens to be that next year Australia Day falls on a Friday, so the Thursday night beforehand would make sense. But again, as you go forward in different years, it might change. It might become always a Friday night event or a Saturday night event. But even there was a bit of feedback there from the Croquet Club. This is feedback through the debrief meeting. Where
the Croquet Club.
The Croquet Club in Wellington said that they went to the event on the night before, the 25th, the evening of, and then the next day they thought, well, great, we've got all Australia Day free. So they organised an extra Croquet Club meeting, an event, just a little mini.
So it opened up their scheduling for them.
Exactly right. So they could then go and play. So they spent the morning of the 26th playing croquet, which is fantastic. And that was part of what we wanted to do. Free up Australia Day to do whatever you want to do, play croquet or go to the dam or lay in bed or whatever you wanted to do, free that up. So the general feedback from the committee seemed to be the 25th worked well, the night before worked well. We probably like the idea of pushing it back maybe half an hour, maybe even an hour, because 5:30 start, it was still warmish. By 6 o'clock, it was just that little bit cooler. So if we started the event at 6 o'clock, that'd be good. The whole ceremony went for about an hour and a half, and we thought that was just a little bit long. So maybe we might just reduce the number of people that we give the opportunity to speak to. So just a few little fine-tuning things like that. So if we got it back to about an hour, we thought that'd be good. So it might be 6 till 7, it might be, say, 6:30 to 7:30, because it doesn't really get dark at that time of the year till probably 8:30. I mean, twilight, official twilight might be, or sunset might be 8 o'clock, but obviously it doesn't get dark immediately.
Particularly and you could well strike a day of 40 degrees.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. So mostly positive feedback, mostly seemed to go well. The addition of an Aboriginal elder speaking as one of the 3 speakers seemed to go down well. So again, refine that, get the information out of the community, and then we'll see what we do next year. One of the issues that was raised certainly by the committee was, what will Dubbo do next year? Now, we'll go and survey the community as well and find out. But, for example, they had a concern that if it was held as a twilight event in Dubbo and Wellington, then they really appreciated lots of councillors. We had 7 councillors down at the event, and so you're not going to get 7 councillors in Wellington, and we had 8 in Dubbo, because you can't be in 2 places at once.
Right.
So that's a bit of an issue. We had some stalls, some of the various stalls at the market event in Wellington and Dubbo were the same stall holders, but they could do that on Friday night and then on the Thursday night and the Friday morning. So that was nice. You could actually, I got that the wrong way around, wasn't it? It fell on a Thursday, Australia Day, so it was the Wednesday night and then the Thursday. Sorry, my apologies.
That's all right. I was asleep anyway, mate. I was still coming back from that jet lag thing.
So you could have the same stallholders be there on the twilight and then the morning, but if you held them both as twilight events, then obviously those stallholders can't be in both places at once. So there's a few little things to fine-tune there. We'll have the Dubbo Australia Day Committee, a debrief from that as well, and we'll go out to a survey to Dubbo residents, see what they thought, and then from that we'll make some council decisions and go forward next year.
It's going to make for some very interesting discussion, I'd suggest, over the next few months. Now, this is a very, very exciting announcement, Matt, that I actually saw on the news during the week. Now, this is in regards to the state government. It's given Dubbo City Council here over $9 million to develop this new northwest residential area. Now, I know this is part of the reason I think we need to discuss this today because, again, in a recent podcast, we talked about this whole idea of this northwest region as being part of the advanced area where the new subdivisions are going to be happening here in Dubbo. Dubbo's growing. We just talked about our new residents. We can see here the fact that it's an attractive city for lots of reasons. There's lots of people coming here. But this was always going to be, I would suggest, one of those sort of a bit in the future type plans. But I'm thinking now that this in the future type plans is coming forward. It's actually not so much like some of those Back to the Future type movies. It's actually going to be, I suggest, maybe in the next year or two, possibly. Is that what the plan is here for Dubbo, for this region now? Now that we have this money?
The whole idea of the Advanced Infrastructure Fund is Accelerated Infrastructure Fund is to accelerate infrastructure. And that's exactly what this will do. So you're right, the planning for the whole Northwest Precinct, we've got a precinct plan there. We've got really a rough plan for it at the moment. We'll get down to finer detail in terms of size of blocks and exactly where various pieces of infrastructure will go. But as a developer, as council as a developer, we've got about 6,000 blocks in there in council land.
6,000 blocks?
And that's council land and some private owned land past some of the council land.
Can I just sort of get some perspective on that? So let's say that the current area, the Keswick Estate area, which is being developed by council there, how many blocks in that area? So we can sort of get a bit of an idea of the sizing. I
don't know the exact number of blocks in the entire Keswick development, but keep in mind that as long as I've been on council, I can remember us selling blocks in Keswick. So there's at least a 20-year history of sales in Keswick, and we're still selling more blocks now. But without the exact numbers, I would estimate that if you looked at the land development from the very beginning of the first sales in Keswick through to when Keswick will be finished and added in the South Lakes area, so that entire area there, this new Northwest Precinct will be larger than that. So I can't tell you off the top of my head, I'm sorry, for how many homes are in there, but a lot.
A lot, yes.
Yeah,
Somewhere around about that figure. Okay,
approximately
cool.
A lot.
So we're talking similar numbers here in the Northwest.
We're talking a fairly big area there. Keep in mind that, again, it's not just the council-owned land, it's the land past. It's all that Bungle Gumby land back to the river, all that land around there, the area where the new bridge, the new River Street Bridge will go, so the area past there. The plan from council was always that we develop that precinct plan, the master plan, if you like, and work on getting to the point at some stage where we'd say, right, we need to develop some blocks of land there. We'll put in a little bit of the infrastructure, the underground pipes, the sewage pipes, the water, the telecommunications, put in some of the road, and then develop a bit of the parcel of land and then sell some blocks and then do that again. And that's the way developers typically work, is that you don't go and develop a whole area because it's too much money you're putting in the ground. Interest charges just cost you too much. So you'll typically develop in little spots, and you'll sell a few off, and then you'll do a bit more and sell a few off, and as you're getting your money from those past
bit by
sales,
bit and work your way through it.
Yeah, you can feed that in. And in fact, when I speak to developers sometimes, when they buy a large parcel of land and they develop that and they're selling all those blocks of land, it might be 10 years later, I might be talking to a developer saying, right, we've now got these last 30 blocks we're selling off. These are the ones we finally get a profit from. All the other money that we kept getting, we kept pouring it back in, it back in. And they're making profit along the way, but it's a profit that gets poured back into the next part.
Pretty much to cover the next lot of costs of the next lot of development.
Exactly, that's right. And then finally you get the last ones, you go, right, we've paid for everything now, so we finally make money on this last lot. So it's a long-term game, that development. For council, that's fine. We're not so focused on driving that profit. We do want to make money because it saves the community money, but it's about providing the blocks of land for the community. So this particular fund, 9.23 million, it's a lot of money, and that's the exciting part. Some people sometimes complain that council doesn't get enough grants from government or doesn't get enough funding coming in, but lately I think we've done some really good strategic work, and this here in particular was great strategic work. So when this Accelerated Infrastructure Fund became available, when the money for that became available, we had this perfect project to say, if we get some money from the government, we can go and accelerate that, put the roads in, put all the underground infrastructure for not just our development, but the developments that are past there. And those developers, those private developers, would not have developed those developments until we'd basically finished ours, because they're not going to pay for all those connections that they need back to our development.
Which is infrastructure they'd believe council should be putting in anyway, I suggest.
Well, they would. And it's not just because it's council, but any developer, you're typically waiting for in or closer to the community developments, closer to the CBD developments to finish before you can finally connect to their pipes. And if I'm a developer, I don't go and run all my pipes and all my roads all to the edge of my development. I do it in that piecemeal approach, one part at a time. And then finally, if I'm a developer that owns some land on the next section, I'm going, hurry up and get your things to me so I can then connect in and start running through my development.
Yeah.
But this Accelerated Infrastructure Fund means that we can do all that work, and that opens up opportunities for other developers as well, because they'll have the ability to connect into the infrastructure that we've got in the ground and the roads that we've got on the ground. So it can help our development, it can help those blocks of land, it can help those other developers. But it's a pretty exciting parcel of land because 6,000 homes, you've got probably no more than 2 kilometres from the CBD of Dubbo.
It's a pretty close area, isn't it?
It
Very
is.
close to that.
Yeah, fantastic. You've got river along there, so that'll be nice.
So is this going to go right down to the river? So you're almost like river-type frontage or close to it? I wouldn't say necessarily frontage, but you're going to be pretty close to the river area there, I suggest.
If you have a look at some of that precinct plan, you'll see that some of that river area is kept for open space, and that's obviously an important part of it. Some of that land goes under in a 1 in 100 year flood, so we're not going to build houses on that. You're going to have that for playing fields or for environmental space, whatever it might be. I don't want to go down that path because that's a different master plan we're talking about. But but some of that stuff really close to the river probably won't have houses on there, but it's not too far away. So people that live there, if they want to access the river, if they want to go down, there might be some open space there. There might be a pedestrian path there across the other side of the river to get to the CBD. So it'll be a pretty nice area and all that new greenfield site. So the great part about that is we can have a good variety of housing stock as well. So it might be some larger blocks, it might be some smaller blocks, it might be some townhouses, it
So
might
it
be
links
some
into
apartment blocks.
last week's podcast in regards to changing up the variables in regards to the land sizes that we're selling here.
Yeah, that's right. So it could be smaller block sizes, but it's not going to be a whole development of 300 square metres.
No.
But it will be a variety of developments catering to the modern development environment that our residents are wanting, in fact, probably demanding. We've got to do that. We've got to have that variety. So it's really exciting. It's a big open area at the moment, a bunch of just grass and burrs that you look at across the moment, but it won't take long. And we're having continuing discussions with different levels of government, but we want one of our roads to connect into the bridge so that you'll have easy access for people to get onto the new River Street Bridge or the new Dubbo Bridge.
Yes.
And so we've got some agreement out of Transport for New South Wales at this stage, but we're not entirely happy with that connection. So we're going to keep working on them for that one.
I've got 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Number 1, what's the time frame of actual starting on this? And are we looking at actually, being able to sell blocks within a certain time frame? And number 2, state government money we're talking here, is that right?
State government, so $9.23 million from the state government direct to council.
Is this assured money based on the fact we've got the state government elections coming up soon? Is this money that's always going to be there? Or?
Yeah, great question. So there are things that will be election promises, I'm sure, but this one is not one of those. This one is you've got the money, it's done, finished. Doesn't matter what happens in the election, it's already a done deal.
Oh, wow, okay, great.
So that's
money
fantastic.
in the bank almost. So
that's what we want, yeah, exactly right. Go back to your first question. A whole range of steps, and I won't bore you with all the various details. What I would say is I would suggest to you an approximate time frame would be by the end of 2024, we'll have someone building a house over there.
Wow.
So there's a fair bit to go through in terms of planning, in terms of some of the infrastructure in the ground, some of the actual dirt that will be turned to actually build some of this. There's a bridge there, obviously, that's being built in alongside it, not by us, of course, but by the state government alongside that. But all of that whole project, forget about all the details there. I think pretty close by the end of next year, you'll see someone building a house there.
So in other words, you're going to start to see things starting to happen pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Now, speaking of master plans, it's one of my great words. I love those master plans. We talked about this a few weeks ago as well, the old master plan. But this is one of the ones we talked about in regards to the Macquarie River Masterplan. Now, I know that, again, a few podcasts back, we talked about this and said that it's been up for discussion for a while now in regards to this. It's been sitting there. If you wanted to make a comment, if you're out there listening right now and thinking, I want to have wouldn't mind putting my comment into the Macquarie River Master Plan, that's been sitting there on the Dubbo Council website for a while. Is this closing this week, or what's happening there with this?
It's closed.
Oh, it's closed. Okay, it's gone. So if you've
Last
thought about
Friday,
it, well, bad luck.
That's right. Hopefully you had lots of opportunities. And
yes,
lots
absolutely. You had probably about a month or so, I'd suggest. So.
Well, yeah, and probably many months of discussion around that. And this is all about that Macquarie River Masterplan. We've got the north end of that master plan, the south end of that master plan. A lot of people associated that with Regan Park because there was a bit of discussion at the time around Regan Park, but it's bigger than Regan Park. So that's been open for some time. We've had various discussions, various processes along there. It's been probably been about a year since the resolutions went through council to start this process.
Right, okay.
So hopefully that's enough time for everyone to get their information in, get their thoughts together. And again, it did close on the 17th, so that's done and dusted now. But it'll still have a bit of a process to go because it's got to go to a council meeting to be finally resolved. So that draft
Was there a bit of feedback? Do you know if there's feedback in regards to
I don't have the numbers yet in terms of how many people put submissions in, but I certainly talked to people who told me they were going to put a submission in, which is great. Yeah. We want that feedback from the community. And so basically we'll take that feedback, we'll look at all that, we'll look at the existing draft master plan, and then from that council will resolve, and this will probably happen at the March meeting of council, resolve finally for the master plan. So that will then be the master plan, which will be sitting there on the shelf, and nothing will happen with it on day one. But what that gives us the ability to do is to say, now we can start chipping away at things. If grants come up, federal, state government grants, we say, oh, we've got a project that fits exactly into one of those grants. Let's go and chip off this little part here. Or when we're looking at our various plans for things to do, we'll be able to start working our way through that. And a master plan typically sits there for 10, maybe 20 years, might be modified a bit along the way, but it's something to give you the long-term vision. It's not something,
guide in regards to where you want to move towards.
Exactly right. Guide's the perfect word. It's not something you go out tomorrow and say, let's build all that, and oh no, that's going to cost us $30 million. It's something that we guide ourselves along the way and give us some direction so you know where you're headed rather than just do things a bit ad hoc.
Hey, tell me, is there a priority the council has in regards to the Macquarie River frontage there, and that's that whole idea of where we're looking at? Is there something here that council? Because I noticed there's the area there. I'm thinking, does this master plan extend all the way down? Remember that there was the entertainment precinct area that was behind, or was going to be set up there on. Was it Ollie Robbins Oval down there?
Yeah, yep.
Is that still going ahead, or what's happening with that?
So this master plan specifically didn't apply to the Central Park because that's a different master plan.
So it's a different part of it, okay.
Yeah, and that whole area there, you're talking about the shared walkway and the entertainment area. So it's happening. It's just being massaged, modified to try and get it right and get it within budget. So that's still a work in progress, and we'll probably be getting some more information out to the community about that as time goes on, because we're not about to start construction with that one yet. It'll still happen in some form or some shape, but we're not quite there ready to go forward with that yet. But so that is a different master plan, and again, that's an example of that master plan has got that precinct in there, and we've got to work out ways to fund that and
finance
get to that.
I suppose.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, we've talked about it a few times, but the New South Wales Junior Touch Footy competition, it starts next week, doesn't it? Friday, I think, coming up. Yeah. So we're almost there. It's a couple of days to go, and maybe you talked about there last week just how much work goes into this and the planning of it. It's been enormous by the committee to get this stuff through. Now, a couple of quick questions before we get into some of the details of this, because I know a lot of residents out there are probably thinking, okay, how does this affect me generally? I'm pretty keen to want to go down and see it, but how does it affect me sort of in my sort of way? We're talking about 7,000 people first and foremost coming here to Dubbo, roundabout. We're talking 3 to 4 days they're going to be here. It'll be a massive influx financially in the community in regards to this. We've got a massive influx of people in the community, so there's lots of areas, the restaurants, the pubs, the shopping areas. I can see it going to be an absolute buzz over these 4 days. I know one of the residents actually asked me during the week about this, who heard the podcast and said, well, what's happening in regards to things like parking? Does this all sort of encompass in regards to parking? Will that affect me with the parking with this as well? So let's jump in. Let's delve in first and foremost. So first question is, can I just ask, how did we get this touch football competition, first of all? Because, you know, normally to get something like this, these things normally run over a couple of years in places. And so how do we get it? Yep. And then secondly, in regards to the planning, coming forward in regards to it, what sort of changes are we going to probably see here in Dubbo over those couple of days? Sure.
So the concept was that the New South Wales Touch Association has 2 junior state cups. They have a Northern Conference and a Southern Conference.
Right, yep.
We previously put a bid in, which is what they do to councils now. They put a bid in. Sometimes they expect you to contribute dollars. They expect a whole range of things from councils because it's really good for a community to get it.
Yep.
We put a bid in. This is going back before I was on council, and we didn't get the bid. It was a 3-year bid process. So you put it in and you were rewarded that or you didn't, and away you went. Port Macquarie won that bid for the 3-year time frame, and the 3-year time frame was 21, 22, 23. Port Macquarie had their event with a bit of rain. Well, they didn't actually have their event. They had a bit too much rain in 21 and 22.
Yep.
And it got to the point where New South Wales Touch said, if we go back there next year and it rains again, our members are going to be ropeable. Why have you picked Port Macquarie? And nothing against Port Macquarie, lovely place, and I know the mayor of Port Macquarie quite well. And again, it's nothing personal about them, but it didn't seem to work in that time frame when they need to run it with the weather that they have. So they went back out to some of those other communities that had bid for it, Dubbo being one of them, and said, we need to move it for 1 year because we still are keeping that 3-year bid process, but just for a 1 year one-off, what can you do for us? And I actually rang the CEO of New South Wales Touch because I'd dealt with him in previous things that we had, various tournaments we had many years ago. So I thought, look, I've got a good enough relationship. I'll ring him. And I said, I said, the problem I have with some of these things is that if you're expecting a community to cough up a large sum of money, 50 grand, 100 grand, I just don't think that works for us. What we want to do for you is we don't want to pay you a lot of money, but we will make it happen for you and make it as easy as possible for you. And he actually said, well, look, you'll have to put your bid in. It'll go through a process. There's a board that will make a decision on that. He said, but you're right. That is part of our pain. Part of our pain is trying to organise an event from afar. And he said sometimes some councils will put in a large sum of money, but they just don't help us at all. So our team got together. They looked at the bid that we put in previously. They actually didn't offer a large amount of money. Dubbo Touch Association, Dubbo Touch Football Association actually did contribute some money. And so we put the bid in and said, here's what we'll do for you. We will make it a very easy process for you. We'll organise things on the ground. We'll work out the hire companies that you've got to use. We'll work out a whole range of things locally and make your job as easy as possible. And there's a little bit of money there as well. And so in the end, they considered that, the board considered that, and they awarded it to Dubbo for the 1 year. So happy days, fantastic. We just hope it doesn't rain.
That's right.
But our fields are very good, so even if it does rain a bit, our fields actually drain quite well.
Anything like today, it's stinking hot, so at least if it does rain, it should wash away pretty quickly. I said, will dry up pretty fast.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's dried out pretty well.
Yeah, so we got it via that process. Now, that doesn't mean we'll get it again. We've got to do a really good job, and then we'll put in another bid for the next 3-year process, for example. But again, just as a one-off, it's fantastic. So we've had New South Wales Touch working, we've had Dubbo Touch Football Association, we've had our staff working on it, and again, we've delivered on our promise. We've made things very easy for them. We've worked with lots of different organisations to make it as easy as possible. 187 teams have been registered.
187?
That brings with it, based on New South Wales Touch's numbers, about 7,000 people, as you said. Based on our numbers, that's about a 4 million plus injection into the economy. So that's all fantastic. One of the interesting things there is that 7,000 people, 5,000 motel beds in Dubbo. Hold on, what are they going to be doing? They're not all going to fit in those. And so we have been
like Mary and Joseph trying to find their staple at Christmas, I suggest.
It is. So when we work with New South Wales Touch to see what we can do, and there will be people definitely who will be staying in Narromine, Gilgandra, Wellington, maybe even as far afield as Parks, but certainly close around that area there. But we've also been working with them doing some homestay programs so that we've actually had people who have been willing to say, yep, well, I'll have someone come stay in my home. So trying to get some people out there into the community, which is probably a nicer experience as well. You get to meet some locals, find out some local information. So all of those things, the Visitor Information Centre team, they'll be working very hard because people will be here and they'll say, oh, well, I've got a day that I've got my sleeve now, or maybe
a game at 9 and a game at 4. I've got plenty of time to fill in.
That's right. Or maybe we didn't make the final, so we could leave early, or we could just hang around for another day. So they're busy and they've got lots of guides there ready for people to say, here's all these things to do. We've reached out to hospitality places in Dubbo to say you might want to put some extra staff on. You might want to be open for some extra hours. There'll be a lot of business around there. So a lot of things happening there. We've also put out a plan for the community, and if you haven't seen it and you're concerned about it, go onto our website, on the council website, and have a look about the road closures. So there will be road closures. It starts this Friday, so the 24th, it goes 24th, 25th, 26th, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there'll be road closures on those days, and we've got those details on our website. But essentially around that whole Lady Cutler precinct, we're trying to restrict cars as much as possible. There will be some cars needed for various things in there, but restrict cars as much as possible because you'll have 7,000 people there.
That's a lot of people. Is there a parking area then that you're setting up there? Is any other, like a field's going to be open up for parking, or what's the plan for the parking?
There is a map on my social media and on the council website. It shows the road closures around the Lady Cutler precinct for the event. It'll generally cover roads around Sandy Beach Road, Ian Drake Drive, South Street, plus some parts there of Bligh Street, Tamworth Street, and even a bit of Macquarie Street. There's some parking on the south side of Tamworth Street, but that's designed for the families of people competing in the touch footy event. There's also a little bit of parking in the centre of the whole event, but that's for officials and some disability parking in there. But New South Wales Touch wants to keep the entire area as car-free as possible because you've got kids wandering around the various fields. If local residents want to watch some of the action, then I'd encourage them to park away from the area and walk to the event. There's 30 playing fields that are there that are going to be used, so a lot of touch happening across
that's
there.
Right.
So that's all very exciting. But again, it might be someone that goes down to work down along the CBD somewhere and they might live along Macquarie Street. And so they might be used to just driving down and going down Bligh Street, and then they'll get there on Saturday morning and go, I can't get down there. So just be aware of that. That whole area will be incredibly busy. There'll be road blockages in place anyway. Park Run, for example, has said they're not going to run on the Saturday because it's just too hard for people to get to it, and you've got lots of fields that'll be taken up. There'll be too many people around that area to try and run Park Run effectively. So they're really good when it's an event on. They normally cancel Park Run when the Titan Macquarie Mud Run's on, for example.
They do,
so
that's right.
They're really good to work with the community as well in that type of scenario. I imagine that maybe Narromine or Mudgee or Parks Park Runs might be a bit busier on that day.
Benefit from the Saturday runs as well.
Yeah, that's right. So it'll be a different scene around that area, and obviously we want the people, the organisers, everyone to have a great experience there. So as much as we can from our community perspective, work out anything you can do to try and make it a great experience for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. How wonderful it's going to be. It's fantastic. Now this is something very close to my heart. I enjoy this. This is the ArtExpress. My daughter is one of those little, I actually think she's a budding artist. I like to think she's a budding artist, a proud parent as well, of course, but she loves all the art. And now, of course, ArtExpress, this is where the Year 12 students, the very top Year 12 students in the field of art, a very core group, a very small little core group gets selected every year, and they get to present their artwork around the state in certain galleries. Now, of course, Dubbo, with our beautiful gallery we've got, we're actually very fortunate because we get to see ArtExpress. Seems to have been the last 3 or 4 years at least anyway, maybe goes back longer than that. And, of course, we've got a local girl by the name of Kira Bussey, a little St John's College girl, very proud to sort of state that. Kira, beautiful kid, did some magnificent artwork, and her work's been selected in the display that's coming again. Now, this all arrives here in Dubbo this Friday.
So it opens up at 6 o'clock on Friday. So
Fantastic.
I would recommend, you don't have to go to the opening. It'll be obviously on display there, but if you can get to the opening, fantastic. This Friday at 6 p.m, you might be busy with touch footy on this Friday.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be a busy weekend, isn't it?
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
But there'll be over 40 artworks there on display.
It's wonderful.
And I've been along to many of these previously, and what I do love is the variety. Doing art now in your HSC gives you an incredible amount of flexibility. And a couple of my kids did art as well. Actually, 3 of my kids did art. And I just know that different projects they did were quite incredible in terms of the variety there. But when you go along to ArtExpress, you see a whole range of different things. It's not art as you would imagine art would have been back when we were at school, for example. It's certainly art that's different. And I'm actually quite amazed some of the artworks that are produced by the kids, given the fact that they're having to do this in a certain time frame around all their other subjects. It's not like they're professional artists and they just dedicate themselves to this one project for several months. They've got to still fit in the rest of their study and still get this done. And I look at some of the things and I just go, wow, how do they do that in the time available to them and the quality of it? So I actually really like it. And as you say, it is the best of the best. It is taking the best artworks from across the state and then putting them on display. It's great to see a local student have her artwork displayed there. That's obviously a really proud moment for her. But just walking around there, and there'll be a big crowd there, I'm sure, at the opening because people do get excited by it. There's probably 2. And I'll get in trouble from Western Plains Cultural Centre for saying this, but there's 2 that I love at the Cultural Centre each year that are ongoing things. ArtExpress and Waste to Art are 2 ones that I absolutely love going along to. Again, we get all sorts of other things. We've got the next Archibald Finals exhibition coming to us this year as well, so I probably should include the Archibald in there. But
it's probably one of those bigger events as well.
That's right. But seeing those 2, ArtExpress and Waste to Art, not professional artists, people who just get in there and do things, just the creativity is absolutely fantastic. So I really enjoy that, and I'm looking forward to going along on Friday and having a look at that as well.
Might for joining you along, I think, there. Sounds like a wonderful night. All right, Matt, that's finishing up now towards the end of the show. And, of course, this is the time here for the Limerick.
Well, the highlight of my week last week, lots of highlights. Every week I have lots of highlights, but I do get a bit of a buzz out of new residents.
Yes.
They come along. I tell them the correct answer as to why they moved to Dubbo is because of the great mayor and councillors we've got in Dubbo. And they laugh sometimes. Yeah. So, I'm not sure if they're thinking that's a joke that I'm saying.
No, absolutely. Vanity is subtlety. There it is.
That's right. So my Limerick this week is all about our new residents.
Oh, lovely.
Here we go. In Dubbo, the new residents did land, moving from all across this great wide land. They soon found out what Dubbo is about, and they now think that Dubbo is just grand.
Oh, well done. Well done, yes. And to all the new residents out there who we welcome with our arms open to you, welcome here to Dubbo Town. Well, folks, that just about, of course, wraps up for another Merrill Memo. It's been another busy week, and I'm sure the fact that this week coming up, get out there to that New South Wales touch footy competition, get yourself down there to the ArtExpress as well, and whatever you're doing, go out there and have some fun in this beautiful region of ours. Until next week, everyone, take care.
Merrill Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.